This is part 2 of the abilities video. Check out part 1 for the previous abilities. But to quickly refresh, we're going to look at what it could look like if a Pokemon had every single ability at once. I also mentioned at part 1, if I mess anything up, I'll fix it in the beginning of this video. So let's go over those real quick. So the first one, I don't think I saw anyone mention, but I checked my notes and I accidentally counted Speed Boost twice and forgot to mention the ability Thermal Exchange. Thermal Exchange will increase your attack by 1 stage whenever you're hit by a fire type attack. But since Contrary and Simple are both active, that +1 becomes a +2, and that +2 becomes a -2. And you're immune to burns. But in part 1 I also mentioned Well-Baked Body, which is similar but boosts your defense whenever you're hit by a fire type attack. But it also makes you immune to fire type damage. So since both of these are active, you'd be immune to fire type attacks, but also gain the defense and attack boost, well actually drops. I didn't list Anger Point as one of the abilities that could have been reversed by Contrary, but if it works similarly to the move Belly Drum, it will be reversed by Contrary. I said Opportunist and Co-Star wouldn't be affected by Simple or Contrary, but if they work similarly to the item Mirror Herb, it will be doubled by Simple and reversed by Contrary. I said that Justified activates whenever hit by a Bug, Dark, or Ghost type attack. It's actually only Dark. I said that Damp prevents Aftermath from activating, but after thinking about just a little more, abilities are typically active when you have HP left, and Aftermath only activates when you have 0 HP left. So there could be a timing issue where once your HP reaches 0, a lot of other abilities stop being active, like Damp, and then Aftermath can activate. So this one is kind of a toss-up. Also, one other thing I found out is that Pickup actually has a secondary effect, that if another Pokemon on the field uses this item, Pickup can activate and you can pick up the item as long as you're not already holding an item. I mentioned that Fluffy doubles your defense if you're hit by a contact move. It halves the damage from contact moves themselves, which in my defense are typically always physical moves, which would then buff your defense, but there are a few special attack moves that deal contact. Fluffy would then basically double your special defense in that case. And these are just some quick clarifications. The Ruin abilities only affect other Pokemon, it doesn't affect yourself. So other Pokemon had 25% less defense and special defense, and 25% less attack and special attack. I mentioned other abilities like Intimidate, Plus, and Minus activating some of your abilities. This is assuming that the other Pokemon is holding the ability shield. Otherwise, yes, all the other Pokemon's abilities will be cancelled out. Another thing I saw a lot of comments about is that if Neutralizing Gas will cancel out your own abilities. You have the ability As One, which is basically an umbrella that all the other abilities go under, and As One can't be cancelled by Neutralizing Gas. So no, this Pokemon's ability will not be cancelled by its own Neutralizing Gas. It can cancel out other Pokemon's abilities though. And finally, a couple commenters mentioned that the ability that encompasses all these abilities, instead of being called As One, could be named One for All or All for One. So comment which one you think it should be. And quickly, a huge thank you to everyone who supported the last video. I didn't think it'd blow up like it did, so thank you so much for all the support. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to keep the channel growing and help me make these videos. Also, and thank you to Mangakaar, who made the thumbnail for this video and the last video. Alright, and now for the contact abilities. Contact abilities activate whenever some form of contact is made between two Pokemon. And contact is a property of attack. So most physical moves are contact moves, but there are some that aren't, like Earthquake. And most special attacking moves are not usually contact, but there are a few that are, kind of like Electro Drift. So we'll go over the defensive contact abilities. So these are abilities that can activate whenever a Pokemon contacts this Pokemon. Cursed Body has a 30% chance to disable any move it was hit with. Q-Charm has a 30% chance to infatuate the Pokemon as long as it's the opposite gender. Flame Body has a 30% chance to burn. Poison Point has a 30% chance to inflict poison. Static has a 30% chance to paralyze. And Effect Spore has a 10% chance to paralyze, poison, or put the opposing Pokemon to sleep. And since all these separate abilities are active at the same time, there's an 84.8% chance that at least one of these abilities will activate as long as the opposing Pokemon can be affected by any of these conditions. So Iron Barbs and Rough Skin both deal 12.5% damage. So whenever you're contacted, you'll deal 25% damage back to the opposing Pokemon. Cotton Down will lower the speed of all the other Pokemon on the field by 1 stage, and then Gooey and Tangled Hair will further reduce speed of the contact Pokemon by 1 stage each. Perish Body will inflict the Perish Song effect to itself and the Pokemon that contact it. And since you already have Shadow Tag and Re-Entrap and Magnet Pull, you actually set up with Perish Trap. Sand Spit will summon a Sandstorm when you're hit, and then Seed Sower will set Grassy Train whenever you're hit. And Toxic Debris will lay out Toxic Spike whenever you're hit by a physical move, so not just a contact move. If the opposing Pokemon contacts you, Mummy and Lingering Aroma will cause their ability to become Mummy or Lingering Aroma. But since we're having multiple abilities at once, let's go ahead and spread love and say the opposing Pokemon gets both Mummy and Lingering Aroma. Wandering Spirit is similar, but it will cause your abilities to switch whenever an opposing Pokemon makes contact with you. But since some abilities like As One can't be transferred due to the effects of Wandering Spirit, in this case All as One or One as All, we'll just go ahead and say that Wandering Spirit itself gets swapped out with the other ability. So then you double up on some random ability. So those are all the defensive contact abilities, but there are some offensive contact abilities that activate whenever you make contact with the opponent. Poison Touch has a 30% chance to poison the opponent whenever you contact them. And also the ability Long Reach protects you from any contact effects that may activate whenever you contact your opponent. Also, if your opponent contacts you and swaps their ability with Wandering Spirit and also gains Mummy and Lingering Aroma, Long Reach will then protect you from regaining those abilities since you're protected from the contact effect of those 3 abilities. And the final contact ability is Toxic Chain, which has a 30% chance to poison your opponent whenever you hit them with any move, so it doesn't just have to be a contact move. Alright, and now onto the item-based abilities. Sticky Hold will prevent your item from being knocked off or stolen, so Symbiosis should still work since you're giving the item away to your partner. Ball Fetch will recover the first Pokeball you use in a wild battle if it doesn't catch it, and also if you're not already holding an item. Pickpocket will steal your opponent's item if they make contact with you, and the ability Magician will cause you to steal your opponent's item whenever you hit them with any move. Unburden will double your speed if you consume your item or if it's knocked off or stolen. And there are 4 abilities based around berries. Gluttony will make you consume your berry at 50% health instead of 25. Cheek Pouch will add an additional 33% healing on top of the effect of the berry.
Here's a
Pokemon
that looks like an apple.
Ripen will double the effect of the berry you eat, and Cudchew will cause the Pokemon to regurgitate the berry at the end of the turn so that you can use it again one more time in battle. So if this Pokemon had the Citrus Berry, it would heal 83% of its health and have another berry ready to go for next turn. And all the item abilities we just went over don't actually mean anything because the ability Klutz prevents any item you're holding from activating or being used. And you can't even use the move Fling. You can still trick away your item though, and you can still give your item to your partner with Symbiosis, since you're not using the item. And now for the defensive abilities. So we have Shadow Shield, Multiscale, and Terra Shell, all being active when you're at 100% health. Shadow Shield and Multiscale will both have the damage from the first incoming attack, and then Terra Shell will temporarily change your Pokemon's type to further reduce the damage, as long as you're not already immune to that type of damage. So with all of these 3 active, whenever you're at 100% health, the first attack will do 1/8 damage. Also, Shadow Shield cannot be ignored by Mold Breaker. And if your opponent is somehow able to deal enough damage with an attack that would have KO'd you 8 times over, Staryu would still prevent you from being one-hit KO'd, and which will also make you immune to one-hit KO moves. Thick Fat will reduce the damage of Fire and Ice type moves by half, and then Heat Proof will further reduce Fire type damage again. Water Bubble will again reduce the damage of Fire types one more time, and double the power of your Water type moves and prevent burns, but you're already immune to burns, and you're already immune to Fire type damage. Purifying Salt halves the damage from Ghost type moves by half, and also prevents you from being afflicted by status conditions. Solid Rock, Filter, and Prism Armor reduce the power of super effective attacks by 25%, meaning that a super effective attack would do 84% damage instead of the regular 200%. And if it's a 4 times effective move, it would do 167% rather than 400%. So it's actually less effective to use a super effective move if it wasn't already going to do 4 times damage. And Prism Armor can't be ignored by Mold Breaker. Liquid Ooze would cause your opponent to lose health whenever they use a draining move on you, but you still take damage though. Unaware will allow you to ignore your opponent's defensive stat increases when you're attacking them, and also ignore their offensive stat increases when they're attacking you. This ability came up a few times in the comments, so to be clear, it only ignores your opponent's stat changes, not your own. So if you're at -6 attack, you're going to be hitting like a wet noodle. And the immunity abilities will give you, well, immunity to, say, attacks, statuses, anything like that. Battle Armor and Shell Armor give you immunity to critical hits. So we did mention Anger Point before, so that one can never activate. Stalwart and Propeller Tail provide you immunity from redirection moves like Follow Me and Rage Powder. Insomnia and Vital Spirit grant you immunity to falling asleep. Immunity grants you, well, immunity to poison status. Limber grants you immunity to being paralyzed. Water Veil prevents you from being burned. There's already like 3 other abilities that prevent that anyway. Magma Armor prevents you from ever being frozen. Comatose puts the Pokemon into a perpetual doze state, which would prevent you from any non-volatile status conditions. And this doze state doesn't actually mean you're asleep, because you don't have the sleep status. Also, Comatose cannot be ignored by Mold Breaker. Water Absorb makes you immune to all water type attacks and also heals you for 25% whenever they're used. And then Storm Drain will draw in water attacks to you and give you a 1-stage special attack boost. But after Simple and Contrary, it'd be a -2 special attack drop. Volt Absorb and Lightning Rod do the same, but for electric attacks. And also, Motor Drive will grant you a 1-stage speed boost. So whenever you're hit by an electric move, you'll gain 25% health and drop 2 stages in speed and special attack. Flash Fire makes you immune to fire type attacks and will power up your own fire attacks by 50% whenever hit by one. And this is an invisible boost, so it's not going to be affected by Contrary. Sap Sipper makes you immune to grass type moves and grants a 1-stage attack increase whenever you're hit, but after Simple and Contrary, it'd be a -2 stat increase. Levitate, not anymore. Levitate grants you immunity to ground type attacks, but also makes you immune to the effects of terrains and most entry hazards. Earth Eater also makes you immune to ground type attacks, but will heal you for 25% of your health whenever they're used. Soundproof makes you immune to sound-based moves, and also makes you immune to the move Perish Song. The ability Bulletproof makes you immune to ball and bomb type moves. Overcoat protects you against sandstorm damage, powder, and spore moves. The ability Windrider will make you immune to wind-based moves, and will also gain you a 1-stage stat increase whenever you're hit by one or if Tailwind is set up on your side of the field, which would then become a -2 stat decrease. Shield Dust prevents you from any additional effects of your opponent's attacks, so if it has a secondary effect, it won't activate, like Fire Punch or Thunder Punch, if they're even able to hit you in the first place with all these immunities. Oblivious will protect you from being infatuated or taunted. Own Tempo protects you from being confused. Inner Focus protects against flinches, so things like Steadfast won't activate, and all these abilities also protect you from being intimidated, just like Guard Dog. Dazzling, Queenly Majesty, and Armor Tail also protect you and your partner from higher priority attacks like Quick Attack, Fake Out, and Extreme Speed. Magic Bounce will bounce the effect of status moves back to the user, and then Good as Gold will make you immune to all status type moves in the few instances that they can't be bounced back. And then Magic Guard will prevent you from taking any damage that isn't coming from a direct attack, so you can't take any damage from hazards, trap damage, anything like that. Clear Body, White Smoke, and Full Metal Body all prevent other Pokemon from lowering any of your stats. So that would be from things like Intimidate, status moves, or the secondary effects of moves. And Full Metal Body can also not be ignored by Mold Breaker. Hyper Cutter, Big Pecs, and Illumination all prevent your attack, defense, and accuracy from being lowered, but they're already covered by the previous 3 abilities. Keen Eye also prevents accuracy from being lowered, but also ignores your opponent's evasion boosts. And then Wonder Guard will make you immune to any moves that are not already super effective. And since the ability Terra Shell makes the first move your opponent uses not very effective, and the ability Wonder Guard makes you immune to moves that aren't already super effective, these two in combination mean that you can't actually take any damage when you're at 100%. Also, in conjunction with Magic Guard, you can't take any kind of other damage that isn't from a direct attacks. So the only way you can damage this Pokemon at 100% health is by using a Pokemon that has the ability Shield and the ability Mold Breaker, because that's the only way you can bypass Terra Shell and Wonder Guard. And now for the status abilities. So these abilities mainly revolve around you or your opposing Pokemon having some kind of status ailment. So in the interest of time, since we've already gone over Comatose, which puts you in a perpetual dozing state, it actually prevents you from being afflicted by any of the non-volatile status conditions. So since you can't have those status conditions, these next abilities won't actually activate. Natural Cure won't activate since you don't have a status condition to heal. Early Bird won't activate because you can't be asleep. Shed Skin won't activate since you can't have a status. Flare Boost won't activate since you can't be burned. Synchronize won't activate since you won't have a status condition that you can pass back to your opponent. Guts and Marvelous Scale won't give you a boost to your attack or defense since you aren't able to have a status condition. Toxic Boost and Poison Heal won't be able to activate since you can't be poisoned. And Quick Feet won't activate since you can't be paralyzed. Also, Tangled Feet won't activate since you can't be confused due to Own Tempo. But Bad Dreams and Poison Puppeteer depend on your opponent having a status condition, so they aren't blocked from activating. Bad Dreams will cause your opponents to lose 1/8 of their health whenever they're asleep. And I lied about Poison Puppeteer. You think it would work normally, as it will confuse any Pokemon that this Pokemon poisons, but this ability only works if Petron is the one that has it. So this one is actually kind of blocked from activating, unless Petron is a Pokemon with all these abilities at once. And now for the priority abilities. These abilities change the priority of the moves you're using. And priority means a Pokemon will be able to skip ahead and use its move before any other Pokemon gets to use their move. There are some moves that have negative priority, but there are only abilities that grant positive priority. Prankster will grant a +1 priority to status type moves. Gale Wings will grant a +1 priority to all flying type moves at full HP. Triage will grant a +3 to healing type moves, damaging or status, which then means if you have a status healing move, it would have +4 priority. Stall will make you move last in your priority bracket. So this might sound like you're always going to move last, but that's only in the priority bracket you have. So if you have a +1 priority move, it will still go before all other normal priority moves, but just last in the +1 priority moves. For example, even if your Pokemon had 1 million speed, it would still go last if it's not using a positive priority move. But say another Pokemon uses Trick Room, that will always go after your Pokemon, since Trick Room has a -7 priority, and you're still in the neutral priority bracket. But then let's say you have 1 million speed and you use Quick Attack, and your opponent also uses Quick Attack. Their Quick Attack will go first since you're going to move last in the +1 priority bracket. And then any Pokemon using a normal priority move would go after those two Pokemon, since they're in the normal priority bracket. Myceliumite will always make your status move successful, regardless of your opponent's ability, but it just makes your move go last in that priority bracket. But since Prankster is also active, your status moves will always be successful and be +1, but they'll just go last in the +1 priority bracket. Quick Draw has a 30% chance to make your move go first in the priority bracket it was going to be used in. And since you can't use a move twice, Quick Draw will activate and it won't happen again at the end of the turn because of Stall or Myceliumite. And now for the substitute abilities. These abilities require you to break through your disguise or illusion to seal the real Pokemon.
Why are you so ugly, bro? Like,
Illusion will disguise your Pokemon as the last Pokemon in your party, but having 100 other abilities activate at once will be a dead giveaway that this Pokemon is behind the illusion. And this next ability can probably go in the forms category, but we'll keep it in this one for now. Disguise would absorb 1 hit in exchange for 10% of your health, but given that you can't really be hit with moves in the first place, it's going to be really hard to break the disguise. And that wraps it up for part 2. As always, if you think I got anything wrong, leave it in the comments, and I'll adjust it for the final part in part 3. And also, thank you to everyone who's watched this far. It means so much to me. I can't thank you guys enough. I'll see you in part 3.